On April 16th in 2021, I interviewed Már Kristjánsson, chief physician at the infectious disease department of the Icelandic National Hospital. At the time, he claimed that the data on Ivermectin was too inconclusive at that point, and believed that further research was needed to justify the use of Ivermectin as a treatment against COVID-19. Was that the case at that point in time?
So the answer is absolutely not. But what was the case is those words that you just read to me, those words are quoted in almost any article on ivermectin in the world. They will find a doctor. It's from a play. They'll find a doctor, generally in physician, and that doctor will say something either identical. So constantly, this doctor says this, and it's always the following, it's always insufficient evidence. They always use terms like low quality evidence, insufficient evidence, uncertain evidence.
But would you say that enough evidence would be available to Már Kristjánsson at this time?
Well, hold on. Let me go further than that, because they always define or dismiss things by using insufficient evidence. So then it would be, the next question, like you said, is, well then, what is sufficient evidence? And I'm going to give you the answer to that. It's whatever they say it is. Yeah. So if you ask me, was there sufficient evidence? My review paper, which I uploaded November 11th of 2020, at that time, I think I had 11 or 12 randomized controlled trials, 17 observational trials, reports from health ministries showing massive reductions in every important outcome. That was November of 2020. And my conclusion in my paper, which passed peer review and was about to be published before they yanked it, essentially concluded that ivermectin should be deployed in the prevention and treatment of COVID-19 worldwide. So that's in November of 2020. So here you get a guy in April. Do you know how many more studies came out between November and April? Dozens. But yet they never stopped saying that. And so when you ask, so I ask, so then what is sufficient evidence? There's never going to be sufficient evidence for inconvenient science, right? So you can never prove that ivermectin is effective because they're always going to say low quality and or insufficient.
He said the studies that had been carried out at the time didn't have sufficient impact, were flawed in various ways regarding research structure, and did not have sufficiently well-defined enough reference groups. Finally, he said almost all the studies were very small studies from countries that we didn't necessarily want to compare ourselves to. Yeah, this is what he said.
So that is identical to any leading physician quoted in a newspaper on ivermectin from any country in the world. They will all say those same things. Wow. That is pure propaganda, which is to say lies. Those are outright brazen lies. Now, let me tell you that it's possible. It's quite possible that that physician believed that. It's possible he believed that, because
I think so, actually.
Because you know why? You know why I believe that he believed it? Is because of where physicians get their information from. They get their information from high-impact medical journals. And the high-impact medical journals, in my mind, the foundation for all of the fraud and the corruption and the needless death that has occurred around the destruction of ivermectin, I think that the foundation of it all occurred at the level of the high-impact medical journals, because in those journals, they wrote articles and editorials with all of those words in it.
You mean the most respected medical journals in the world?
So the #1 journal in the world is the New England Journal of Medicine.
Right.
The Journal of the American Medical Association, the British Medical Journal, and the Lancet are the top 4. And all of them published numerous editorials and fraudulent trials showing that hydroxychloroquine didn't work, ivermectin didn't work. That's where the corruption was.
Can you prove this?
Absolutely can prove it. No one's listening. No one's listening. And who's going to give me a chance to prove it? I mean, I'm going to go in a courtroom and I'm going to show all the things that they did. I would love to have a court case with one of those trials, because I will tell you that the trials that supposedly showed that ivermectin didn't work, I wrote a chapter on it in my book. It's called, sorry. It's called the Big Six, because there were 6 very large trials on ivermectin. Those were the only trials published in the high-impact medical journals. Each trial failed to find a statistically significant benefit with ivermectin. Each trial was described as large, high quality, and rigorous. And they were published in the top journals of the world. And each time they were published, huge newspaper and PR campaigns went out. Ivermectin doesn't work, latest study says. So you take a doctor like that, and what does he know? What he knows, what he sees in the media. He knows what he reads in the journals. And the journals were absolutely crystal clear on this. The best trials showed it didn't work. So not only does he believe that, but let's say you put him into a room with me, he would be very dismissive of me. I clearly don't understand the science, Frosty, because I don't know the difference between a good trial and a bad trial. But what's the most depraved part about it is it's actually the opposite. What he's saying are flawed trials. It's actually the biggest trials that were fraudulent. They were the only trials done by investigators that had ties to the pharmaceutical industry.
But these articles are peer-reviewed, right?
Supposedly.
Supposedly. At the time when I did this interview in April 2021, the National Hospital here in Iceland was using remdesivir. Már Kristjánsson, this head doctor, said that the World Health Organization had certainly taken a stand against remdesivir, but that had been on political grounds. I unfortunately didn't ask him more specifically about that, but he stated that there had been much better data for the use of remdesivir than for Ivermectin at the time we did the interview. Would that have been an accurate claim at the time?
That's shocking. Now I'm worried about your friend there.
Yeah.
Because with the Ivermectin stuff, I could somehow be generous and accuse him of being ignorant around Ivermectin and just believing what he's told. But that is a little bit more damning. So remdesivir, huh? He thinks that the WHO didn't recommend it because of a political bias.
He said that to me in the interview.
Because the trial, which was not criticized, the huge solidarity trial, the WHO found it didn't work in the hospitalized patient, nor should it have worked in the hospitalized patient. Your friend also, over there is also a moron, even though he's an infectious disease specialist. And I'll tell you why he's a moron. And now here's the thing. If I'm going to claim that he's ignorant and a moron, this is an infectious disease specialist, right? So how is that possible that he's saying things that are so ignorant? So for instance, let me give you 3 basic facts. Live virus in a patient is essentially not present after day 6 or 7 of illness. The SARS-CoV-2 virus is done. What your people are in the hospital for, because they usually get hospitalized around day 8 or 10, is the inflammatory response to the viral debris, what the virus triggered, the mRNA. And so it's this hyperinflammatory response. Remdesivir is an antiviral. It only has antiviral properties. How could it work in the hospital when the virus technically in most people are not present? So why would you give an antiviral 8 days into illness through the IV? Interestingly, there's a very positive trial for remdesivir in outpatients. So when you give it early, it actually showed a large magnitude. So anyway, for him to claim that remdesivir somehow works despite the WHO's trial because of some political thing, that is very concerning to me. Here's another subtle fact that very few people know about remdesivir. If you look at all the studies of remdesivir and you split them into 2 camps, one camp is the trials in which literally was funded by Gilead or done by other pharmaceutical conflicted investigators. And you compare them to trials done by independent investigators. So just someone in their hospital, clinician, wanted to do a study seeing if remdesivir. So, and when you look at those, you find 2 very different conclusions. The pharma trials show that remdesivir is effective. The independent trials show that it's harmful. Really? And you can decide, and your listeners can decide what they want to believe around remdesivir, because people like that, like this doctor here, I think he's literally influenced. I mean, he has a huge conflict of interest. He can't actually be objective and truthful and well studied in an interview with you because he would lose his job. Because if he said anything remotely approximating the truth or the scientific truth, he would be gone. And I would even further maintain that this guy, and it's not about him individually, this is just how it is across the world. If, let's say, he were to tell you the scientific truth on any topic in an interview, he would lose his job very quickly. And the flip side of that is he has that job because he has the ability to say that kind of nonsense in a national interview. And I'm telling you, these people are a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. They can be bought and sold. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of these white coats coming out with their names and their degrees and their titles, and they look you in the eye and they tell you something arrogantly and definitively, and it's a lie, and people die. And then they go home to their bed, to their nice cars, and to their job where they're commended for their excellence and their expertise on a scientific topic. Meanwhile, they're leaving a trail of death. And there's people like them around the world in every health agency around the world. They've been doing this. They come out of the journals, they come out of the big institutes, all of the big names, and that's all they're doing. It's all propaganda. They're absolutely just mentally manipulating you with their names, degrees, and institutions. And it's like you said, wouldn't these journals lose their integrity? Seemingly not, because no matter how many lies they've told, no matter how much death has resulted from their advice, they still... You know, when you say the Mayo Clinic in the United States or Karolinska Institute in Sweden, everyone still thinks, the best medicine and the best minds are there. I would predict, and I try not to make too many predictions, but my sense is that esteem and that respect and that veneration that those major historic institutions in society and public health, all that they've gained over the last 50, 100 years, I guess it's not a prediction. It's my hope that it comes crashing down and everyone's able to see it's going to be demolished because they've unleashed a humanitarian catastrophe. The scope of dying not only directly resulted to the vaccines, but to the suppression of effective early treatments, has led to millions and millions and millions of deaths. And if that fact becomes widely known, and it's hard to make that widely known fact because the media will not allow that fact to be propagated.
Do you think the use of remdesivir in critical care here in the hospitals here in Iceland was harmful to the...
Insane. It can
Harmful
only be
to
harmful. It can only be harmful. I mean, it shouldn't work, doesn't work. The hospital studies didn't work. There are studies which showed it had some benefit. It's modest and suspect. Even those that showed benefit, you have to have a high degree of skepticism for who's doing those trials and what their influences are. And that has a lot of toxicity, and it's also illogical. Why would I use an intravenous antiviral on day 8 of someone's illness when there's no more live virus? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't care what the studies show. It's a bad medical decision just based on mechanisms and principles.
So the people that were lying there on ventilators... almost dying and getting remdesivir, it was not doing anything.
Many of them, either it did nothing or it harmed them, is my guess. It may have helped a couple, but that's not how we choose to protocolize in medicine because it helped 1 or 2 people. When it harmed, an endless degree, and then it did nothing in the rest, and then at a cost of... I think it's $3,200 for a 5-day cost in the United States. And so you're bankrupting the public health budget on an expensive drug that barely works, if at all, and it's actually extremely harmful. I mean, it's ludicrous, but it's the standard of care in the United States today.
I asked him if it wasn't much more expensive than Ivermectin. He said, I don't know about that. I haven't looked into it. And he's the guy who orders it for the hospital. So it's...
He knew damn well how much it cost. How could you not know how much remdesivir? Everybody knew how much remdesivir cost. It's an expensive drug.
He's the guy who makes the decision of getting it.
You need an ICU, you need a hospital, you need an IV, you need a nurse. I mean, that's expensive therapy. Whereas Ivermectin's a pill.